So this is building a community for beginners. And that's me. I'm Jennifer Konikowski. And I work at Akamai as a software engineer. And I started PyLadies Boston 4 years ago with the express intention of bringing more women and genderqueer individuals into the programming community. So 6 years ago, I started learning Python. And 5 years ago, I switched to Ruby. So you sort of might be wondering what I, as a Ruby developer, am doing at a conference like PyCaribbean. Well, I actually think the Python community is a lot better than the Ruby community. Don't tell them that. So I started PyLadies because I feel like I'm much happier to bring newer developers into the Python community than the Ruby community. So keep being nice. You guys are doing really good at that. So in the past, when I've gone to user groups as a newer developer, it's been extremely intimidating. Like, everyone seems like they know what they're talking about, and it's like, I'm the only one who is totally new to this and has no clue what anyone is saying. And I also would never be sure who to ask questions of, like at a project night. So that's every happy person at the user groups, and then that's me, going like, oh. So in the end, I stopped going to most of the other groups, and I just created my own, because I like community. But a lot of people will get so discouraged that they'll just decide that programming's not for them at all, that they're just, they think maybe they're too dumb. And we all know that that's not true. It takes a wide variety of minds can learn to code. You don't have to have a specific thought pattern. So that's the reason that I think we need to make a community for all these sad little beginners out there, and need to be sure to welcome them into our groups. So why exactly? Well, we want to make sure that our communities are more diverse, and we want to be able to expand out to other beginners. So the more diverse our community is, that means the more diverse our teams that we actually work with will be. And this matters because, as Harvard Business Review says, and they're much smarter than I am, working with people who are different from you may challenge your brain to overcome its stale ways of thinking and sharpen its performance. And that's people who come from different economic backgrounds from you, are a different race, different gender. You see a lot of teams nowadays that will all look the same. That means that, oftentimes they'll have the same experiences, and they won't necessarily think about unique solutions to problems. So I also really strongly believe that everyone should be able to learn to program. We shouldn't limit it to just people who were privileged enough to learn to code in grade school. You should be able to learn to program as an adult as well. That should not make you less of a programmer. So, and we need to be open to helping people learn, no matter their age, gender, or educational background. If someone wants to join our community, we should want to help them. And having community to help learn should not only be open to people willing to pay thousands of dollars for a college or a code school. Like, we should be happy doing this for free. So I'm using these groups as case studies because, sorry, I keep moving this. Case studies because I'm from Boston. So I started PyLadies Boston, and I'm also involved with Boston Ruby Women, leading weekly study sessions during my lunch hour. And just anyone who wants to come ask me a question can. And I found that to be super helpful. And obviously, Boston Python and Boston RB are our two main groups. So how can you do your best to make sure that your group is open to beginners? Well, so first, let's talk about new groups. So if you're thinking about starting a group from scratch, so this is not going to be your existing Python group. So you want to make sure all of your descriptions are beginner inclusive. And that's your group description, your event description, everything. So here's some examples. No problem is too big or small. Good for people of all levels. It's simple, but you want to be clear about what your content is, and people should know when they're coming in what to expect. So be clear about what knowledge and skills are required. So people oftentimes will underestimate themselves. So you want to be extremely clear about what is needed for your particular event. A common one I use with a lot of tutorials is like basic Python required should have mostly completed a tutorial like learn Python the hard way. So when I'm saying basic, I try to be very clear that literally you should understand what a function is, and maybe you don't need more than that. And then you need to find out what your local community needs, because every community is different. With Boston, we have a massive amount of colleges and universities, which means we cater a lot to scientists who are realizing that MATLAB is expensive and SciPy is free. So they come to PyLadies. They have no intention of necessarily being full-time developers, but I don't care. I just want more people coding, period. So with PyLadies, we do a lot of tutorials. Like we've done tutorials on SciPy, SQL, and we also have started doing code reviews as well. And there's been a lot of demand for that. However, with Boston We Women, that community, even though it's in the same city, is very different because they're all learning Rails development, and most of the people who are coming in are going to code schools. So the desire is more to have conversation and to just be supportive rather than actually teaching them how to code, which is what PyLadies does. And you also want to ask for feedback, and this is also a good one for existing groups. Ask for feedback all the time. And one thing with feedback, don't let it get you down, because sometimes people can be a little bit harsh. Just let it wash off. All you need to do is try and take in what people have to say and be like, can I do this? Yes or no? Because sometimes people will make suggestions and be like, oh, your group should really be doing this. And you're like, nah, I really don't have time to do that because I am a single person, just trying to do this on the side with my full-time job, as most of us. So, but I do this every single year. PyLadies, we have an anniversary party, and most of that is standing in a circle being like, hey, how did we do last year? What worked? What meetings did we have that you were like, this sucks? Like, can we not ever do this again? Because to give an example, I did one that I thought would be pretty good, and it was a disaster. We did a mentor, sort of like mentor-mentee, like speed, I called it speed mentoring. It was, everyone got to talk to each other, but it did not accomplish its goal. And thanks to the feedback I got from that, I'm definitely never doing that again. So I would not recommend doing that. So, and you also want to try all different types of events. So these are some of the ones that we've had a ton of success with. Obviously, presentation nights. But the key thing with this is when you're making your call for presentations, make sure it's very open. Be like, if you're a beginner, we want to hear what project you're interested in doing. This does not have to be a highly technical presentation, because we've had a wide range, and we've had people. One of the women in my group started her own data consulting firm, and she's done presentations on the projects that she has been a part of, and she's just able to explain it in a way that's very accessible to beginners as well. She doesn't dig deep into the code. She'll just talk about the tools she used, and for the people who are interested in going deeper, she can talk about that with them later. So it doesn't isolate people who have no clue. So lightning talks are my absolute favorite. I'm also really pushy, so which it sort of requires someone who's really pushy oftentimes to get people to do lightning talks. So usually in the group meeting before, the month before that we're having lightning talks, I'll be like, so everyone wants to give a lightning talk, right? Hey, you do, right? So what do you do? Oh, you like bird watching, great. So you're going to do a lightning talk on bird watching. Because the other thing is, oftentimes, especially with technical talks, people really don't like being told they're wrong in front of a room full of people, right? That's the most intimidating thing ever. It's happened to me before. I usually just like, okay, whatever, you know, blow it off, I'm wrong. But sometimes that can stop people dead in their tracks to where they don't even want to sign up. So we opened our lightning talks up to any subject that someone wants to talk about. Like, we try to focus on more, more technical related talks. However, if someone hasn't given a talk in public before, then I'm more inclined to be like, are you interested in public speaking? We can start you on something you're extremely comfortable with. So one of the women in my group is a bird watcher. She gave a talk on bird watching. And then her next talk, she actually gave on like comparing knitting to object-oriented programming. So she stepped up. And oftentimes it's just that initial one that just makes people extremely nervous. So if you can open up your lightning talks to accept slightly less technical talks, it'll help get more people open to the idea of public speaking. And tutorials are much harder to put together, but they're always one of our most successful things because everyone is interested in learning new things. Like, tutorials are pretty much always our most heavily attended meetings. And oftentimes it doesn't have to take as much time as you think. Like, I put together a SQL tutorial that ended up lasting about 2 hours. I put that together in an hour. So, like, that actually didn't take, it took more time to give it than it did to make it. And so it's like, if you have a tool that you love using, share it. And it might be a common one, but oftentimes common ones, what you might think is common, like SciPy. We had someone give a talk on SciPy and NumPy. A lot of people came because they weren't familiar. Like, those tools are quite vast, and there's always something new to learn. So, and in addition, as the person giving the tutorial, anytime you have to explain your own knowledge to a beginner, it will help strengthen your existing understanding, because people are going to ask questions, and you will have to actually validate what you know, which is, to me, really useful. And a new one we've started up that I think is really fun is mob programming. So, are you guys familiar with mob programming? I can see some yeses, some no's. Okay, so mob programming is basically like, well, we do a mix of mob programming and sort of like mass code reviews. So someone puts their existing code up on the screen, and it's either I've solved this problem, but I could use a review, and then we all look at it and all like shout out suggestions, or this is what I've got so far, but it's not working, like help me solve it, and we all shout out suggestions. And it's so much fun. And everyone, one of my favorite things is that everyone can benefit from it, because you see, by default, it can't be too difficult of a problem, because otherwise you can't fix it. like you're not getting anything done. So usually it's a relatively, actually the last one we had took the whole hour and a half of our meeting. But this woman was basically trying to translate binary data into a readable list. It was something to do with science. I'm not a scientist. So the actual, what she was actually doing was beyond me, but how she was accomplishing it in Python was pretty interesting. We were able to give her suggestions on how to improve her code and how to solve the problems that she was still having. And even the people who had never really used Python were able to contribute a bit. So this is one of my favorite new ones. So it's another one where people are nervous. So if you do one of these, make sure you have some of your own code to be ready to take up some time, because sometimes people will be like, oh God, no, I don't want to show everyone, you know, the crap that I've got. And I'm like, nope, here's my crap. It's awful. Like, let me set the bar, and the bar is like down here. So I'm just here to make everyone feel better about themselves, really. So the other thing that we tend to do is we host separate events basically just for beginners. In general, any of these events will have a mentor or like an experienced person there. But the main point is our beginner events always draw out people that are too intimidated to even go to like PyLadies in Boston Ruby Women, which, considering especially Boston Ruby Women, we literally just sit around and drink wine. Like, that's saying something. Like, so it's like having a focus time where you, like, pretty much everyone there knows that they're at the same level and they're all trying to learn is extremely helpful. And they end up coming to the main group. And again, oftentimes, especially the goal for us, if you're starting a new group, part of the goal can be to make sure to help grow your primary user group as well. Because if you're starting a smaller group that's more focused exclusively on bringing beginners in, well, at some point you want them to stay with your group and give back once they learn more. But you also want to give them enough confidence to go into the main groups, to give talks to a larger audience. And that takes time. So we have study groups where, and this is one thing that I've been trying to promote with PyLadies, is also encouraging members to host them in their own neighborhoods. Be like, even if you don't have like a mentor there to help answer your questions, if there's two of you working on the same tutorial, you can help each other. And you can always reach out to one of us through email, you know, if you can't find an answer. But we also try to host these weekly on the weekends, and it's a little intense, but this is where you get a ton of volunteers. And so every weekend we try to have a meeting just for beginners where we get one more experienced, called a mentor, will show up and be there to answer any questions that they have. And then sort of similar, but with a slightly different focus, like more of a mentor session, and instead of learning to code, this is where you get more, I guess, like junior developers who are trying to find jobs and are more like past that initial learning stage and are like trying to figure out, you know, how do I get through this dev interview? Or oftentimes more important, you know, I've gotten rejected 20 times, you know, is programming really for me? And you're there to say, yes, it is. We all get rejected a bunch. Like, don't worry. I've been rejected more times than I can count, but somehow I still get jobs. You know, but people who have just joined the industry maybe don't know that, especially if they join and they're switching and it's maybe only their second job out of college. And you know, getting a job out of college can often be a little bit easier because you have like career fairs and all these big things and everyone's focused on getting you a job. Well, when you're just on your own and you're a junior developer, you're just like, crap, there are a ton of us, and no one wants to hire me because I have no experience. You know, am I good enough for this? Should I just go back to my old career, you know, especially in Ruby? Well, did I just spend $15,000 for nothing? Hopefully not. So being there and being supportive is really important. And in addition, as people who I think mostly work at software companies, it can also be a good way to get to know people that you might want to bring into your own companies. So like through these groups, I've gotten 2 people hired at both my current company and a past company because I saw one of our like current needs, and I was like, you need to apply, and then I'm going to push for you because I know that you have the right mindset for our team. Because oftentimes, especially with a junior, it will take a little bit more time to get to know them and what drives them. So it can help you find the right person who will be productive in your team from fairly early on, for the selfish side of it. So now on to existing groups. Let's see, where am I? Okay, so this is like the easiest thing you can do. Set up a welcome email for your like meetup to send out every time someone joins, and give them the idea, you know, say everyone's welcome regardless of experience. Tell them what your meetups are like, what they can expect from each meeting. Obviously the gist, because you can't actually say exactly what's going to happen at every presentation or project night. But you can give them a rough idea, and that will take maybe 10 minutes to write, so everyone's got that time. We can do that. All right, this is another easy, having someone at the front, like having someone to greet people who come in is pretty simple, especially if it's the same person most of the time, because then they'll get to know people and there's a friendly face. So like, for the past 4 years, I show up early to every PyLadies event, and I talk to everyone who comes in, which, it's a lot. So, but it makes a huge difference, because, you know, I can say like, oh, I saw you last month, you know, how's it going? How's everything, you know, I'm terrible with names, so I usually have to ask their name again. But, you know, after a few months, I remember it, and then they're usually a lot more excited to see people that they know, to see someone who recognizes them. And it makes it just a little less intimidating to have someone who knows. And also, they can tell you can tell people where to go if they're new, because that can often, especially if you have a project night, that can often be one of the more intimidating things. You go in, everyone's just at their computer, and you're just like, do I just sit down and sit here by myself? Okay, you know, having direction will really help me make people feel welcome, and that's really making people feel welcome is the name of this whole game. I could have shortened this. This could have been 5 minutes. I'm sorry. So you want to make sure that there are regular talks that are suitable for beginners. And that doesn't mean by God, you do not need talks that are like, this is what a string is. Like, that's for your beginners focused meetups, not for your regular talks. But when you think about it, like if you look at the talks that we have here at PyCaribbean, you know, there are different levels. You know, some that are open to all, some that are focused on beginners, some that are more intermediate. What a lot of groups I feel like tend to have is a whole lot of these intermediate level talks. And so if you're a beginner, you go in and the entire lineup of talks, like let's say there's 3 talks that night, none of them make any sense. And you don't want that. You want maybe, one nice in-depth talk and a couple that are more open to everyone. Or try and encourage people who, even if they're talking about a bigger project that they have, encourage them to sort of to simplify it down, to make sure that they're explaining it in a way that everyone should be able to understand. And it can be more of a challenge, but challenge yourself. So a few suggestions for project nights, because while I love them, they can be really awful. So I would highly recommend having beginner tables, or a single table, depending on how big your project nights are. So have a table that is clearly marked, that your welcome person can point people to if they're just starting out. And you want to ideally, if you can get the volunteers, have someone there who maybe they're working on their own project, but is also like, hey, I'm willing to help, like tap me on the shoulder, to say hey if you need help, and don't hesitate, even if I look like I'm deep in thought. Because, so like I moved up to Boston, I got a Ruby job. I had never used Ruby before. I show up to Boston RB to a project night, trying to work on my little Ruby project and learn it. And no one talked to me. I just sat there and I'm just like, everyone looks like they're working really hard and I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna sit here and work really hard and be really confused and get nowhere. And I know I'm not, especially with project nights, even more so than other ones, because everyone is focused on what they are working on. So make sure make sure you have a separate area. And one of the things so one of my friends has sort of taken over Boston RB since the days that I joined and tried. And one of the things that they've started doing for their project nights that's had a lot of success is introductions. So everyone introduces themselves, gives like a little description of what they're working on, and then you can also have them say if they're looking for either help or you can always say collaboration, or if, let people say if they're looking to collaborate on something, because you should be able to come to a project night and maybe not have a project you want to work on. You should be able to help other people with their projects as well. And that allowing for collaboration, emphasizing collaboration will help make beginners feel a bit more like they can come and see if they can help out. So, which is actually, I got ahead of myself because I just said this. All right, so the last bit is sort of like workshops and teaching in general, which are to me, the hardest things. So there are a lot of, really, how many of you have run a workshop before? Yeah, so you guys are all empathizing with me in that it is such a freaking big challenge. So here's some suggestions, and I'll definitely be interested in hearing some feedback. I'm hoping I can get through this and hear some feedback. So one of the biggest issues is space, because oftentimes companies, at least in Boston, a lot of companies are like, oh, I don't want to host you on the weekend. We're not here. I don't want to come in on the weekend. And however, if you have local colleges and universities, they're often more likely to allow you to use open space, especially if you have members that are a student there or teach or work. So, and with Python, there's a good chance you have someone who is involved with a university. So, volunteers. Getting volunteers, all you have to do is, be pushy, Be like, everyone wants to help out with this Django workshop, right? Yeah. You know, and send a million emails, pester everyone, and eventually people give in. But be prepared for no-shows. So, like, be prepared to do that presentation yourself if someone doesn't show up. Like at the last one we did, we had 2 no-shows, and I did too. I just ran through them last minute. And you know what? It worked. Everyone was happy. Everyone learned Django. So, but just mentally. Content is luckily really easy because there's a ton of people who've done it before. So you can look at, if you're looking for Django, obviously there's Django Girls. And if you're looking to do just a workshop on Python, there's the Boston Python workshops and the content that they've done there for, and that's just beginning Python. So food, obviously reach out to local companies who will also usually throw in a volunteer because they want to promote their company. So 2 problems, 1 stone. Continued engagement is the biggest thing, and not too hard. So, well, the idea is not too hard. So if you have a workshop, what you want to do is have your project night the week after the workshop. And you want to tell everyone at the workshop that they should come to your project night, have a place for them, and encourage them to continue working on their Django project or their Python project, whatever workshop you did. So, and that is what Boston RB has been doing with Railsbridge, and they've had a massive amount of success. So, okay, so do's and don'ts teaching programming. Let's see if I can make it through this. So, have beginner events where people can bring questions from a variety of tutorials. Trying to focus on just a single tutorial usually loses people because everyone learns in different ways. I learn better reading things. Some people learn better watching videos. Let people learn the best way that they can. So don't limit people. And also, actually, a quick back. Also, make sure you say that you're available by email, because really, like, PyLadies now is about 1,000 people, and I also have like email up on my website where I'm like, ask me anything you want, like, I'll help. I don't get that many emails, so it should not be as big of a problem as you might think. But the few people who reach out to you for help will be so grateful. Okay. Don't just hand them a text tutorial with no support. Like, if you just are like, here's learn Python the hard way, that should be good. You're going to have people who are going to get lost, especially now that he added the more intense chapters and is actually going into object-oriented programming. That's where someone I know is stuck right now. So just make sure you're available, or not necessarily you, someone is available. Oh, did I? Yep. No, somehow I skipped some. Okay, so somehow I skipped around. So really quick, nope, I already did that. Okay, don't have a free class that builds on itself week after week. Girl Developer can do it because they charge a bit. If you don't charge, people stop coming. And eventually, you start off with 30 people, and 3 weeks down the line, no one shows up. And you've put all this time into building a tutorial, and that is a waste. So short one-off tutorials, basic programming concepts are awesome. All right, I think I'm out of time, basically. But you can make a difference, and you really can. Like, the feedback that I get from people is incredible. And the minute like you have even one person say that you have helped them become a programmer, like the feeling is amazing. So like it takes a little bit of time and effort, but it's really worth it. And it's really rewarding. So I'm going to skip that. Okay, so questions, that's me.